virtual reality, right? We can join ourselves from different places quite easily. And they're joining us tonight for this reading and discussion on writing towards the future. I think during the pandemic, we've all felt, at least I'll speak for myself, a little bit like honed into the present, kind of in a day by day, let's get by mentality. So I find it refreshing to have us start looking towards the future. And all these poets have really exciting work that we'll hear from. And then we'll have a moderated discussion for about 15 minutes. And then at the very last 15 minutes, like 6:45, we will open it up to an audience Q&A. So please put questions in the chat. I'll choose from those to ask to Patricia, Laura, or Megan. We can even ask you to unmute. You can ask it yourself if you want. Leave comments in the chat, say hello to each other. But there will be an audience Q&A towards the end of the night. So we're just going to begin and kick off with readings from each of these great poets. They'll be reading for about 5-6 minutes each, and then we'll turn to the discussion portion of the night. So our first reader and poet is Megan Peak, who I've not seen for over a year. We saw each other in the flesh at AWP, the National Writers Conference that was in San Antonio in March 2020, which, no surprise, feels like a long time ago now. I'm just going to give you a little brief background on Megan. She received her MFA in poetry from the Ohio State University, where she was former poetry editor at the Journal. Her first book of poetry, Girldom, won the 2018 Perugia Press Prize from Perugia Press. And in 2019, this book won the John A. Robertson Award for Best First Book of Poetry from the Texas Institute of Letters. Congratulations, Megan. She lives in Fort Worth. She's just had a baby. She's been extra busy. She was letting us know before. And I just am so excited to begin tonight's Writing Towards the Future with Megan reading some of her poems to us. So Megan, and everyone, please stay muted just while others speak. It just helps kind of cut back on reverberation. So Megan, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Alexandra, for hosting this wonderful reading and for inviting me to read with Laura and Patricia. So I'm going to read a few newer, like pretty new poems, and they are all centered around mothering, which I have been in the throes of recently, and probably forevermore, I'm assuming. So this is called Compilation of Splendors Upon Leaving the Fertility Clinic. It all compounded into a single flickering beat. August rain spilling through the gutter, flurry of deep pink blooms loosened from crepe myrtles, fat tubas marching like roosters through a parking lot, small splendors, a child and dress, lips red from a cherry ice pop, eggs frying on a steel griddle. When was the wind ever this long, this gentle, or the river with its waiting birds, its secret pebbles? There's Lucinda on the radio, my father who boasts he'll play only the best for his grandchildren, like Wilco or Yola Tango. There's the old woman contemplating avocados who palms the fruit like precious jade, and the doctor with his gloves, hopeful, gripping his wand as the screen flutters on. Then the search, like a mother trying to find the right spot to start peeling an orange, then astonishment, silver dreams, the slight quiver of life beneath a quiet street, all the snow melting from my dark self, the space I carved out for newness after woe, the way the world drops sweet blossoms like letters at our feet, singing, look, look how we try again each year, how we return after a season of cold. This next one is called Feast with Grief at its Center. Somewhere there's a branch of bloomed plums, fistful of dark prizes woven throughout the tree. A grouse too feeds on the fallen fruit, black feathers unfurled in the brush as the moon wounds them into light. The ants' sequence of shadow, self, shadow spread over the split droop. It's a feast, every creature called to the table, skulk of foxes, their kits a howl in the din, a raccoon edging closer, pocketing pit after pit, the doe nudging her fawn forward to take a bite, the sound of a road nearby, its somber hum, and a possum on its back, opening her black eyes to the world one last time, her babe still alive in the pouch. Rain bruises the tender knoll. I've learned to love my son like any animal, for it to cross the road unscathed, to dodge the blinding headlights, to fill his belly with something more than sorrow. Both my kids were born super early. They don't like to stay in. My son was born at 24 weeks and my daughter was born at 29 weeks, and they were in the NICU for quite a long time. This poem is called a new mother abecedarian, and it's a poem that goes through every line starts with the first letter of the alphabet, but it's about my experience in the NICU with my firstborn. New mother abecedarian. At night, I drift down corridors like a moon-high moth, bang my head against the glass where you sleep, a fever crib. You're light as a rabbit, chest a charm of hummingbirds darting in time with machines. Lights above you burn blue electric while women prick your feet, thread lines thinner than fishing wire up your arm, fill you with bags of sugar and blood, golden milk. They tend to you in ways I cannot. I'm not sure how to mother, given only my body, a grief this fraught, grief so interior that had to cut it out, lay it flat on the table, jostle it back to life. Every time I hear you whimper, kitten soft, milk floods as if I'm meant to feed a whole litter, as if the body knows when to empty, when to brim over. More and more I circle your crib like a wolf, teeth bared, neck fur raised. No one dreams of this. They dream of trumpets, bellies big and sweating. They dream of labor, push and pull of breath, that first sharp scream, anything but quiet and cold. These days we hold on to anything gentle. Red birds on the windowsill outside your room, warm sponge baths, skin to skin for an hour or two. I never thought to be a mother would mean nursing a beauty as unbearable as you. I sit and rock as women return with vitals and stats, their usual spiel. They're watching this, monitoring that. But 100,000 x-rays can't show me more than what I already know. You, your fierce heart, swift as a new spring doe. Your breath, zephyr, sweet on my neck as we wait for the birds, red and bold. I've got just two more. They're brand new. So here they are. This one's called The Crux. When at the end of the week, one child's body is ribboned with fever and the other's is sleepless unless cocooned under my breast, I say enough. I say enough, and when my husband asks enough of what, I want to make a list, a bold, endless list of everything I've had enough of. The cycle of uncurable colds that plague our house, the dog's piss spots on the carpet, another day where I'm lost in my body, where my name is not Megan, but mom or mommy. What's more repetitive than the wail of a newborn, the tantrums of a human becoming more human? Love, maybe? Grief? Isn't that the crux of mothering, the loop of loving and loving and grieving all the selves, all the many lives, lived and unlived? Of course, I'm nowhere close to having an answer for him when the babe nods off, milk dribbling into the cushion of her neck. Oh God, I've been saving up my sadness, stashing it under mattresses and in sock drawers. I've been moonlighting else entirely, hopping every train in my mind that passes me by. And this last poem is called I Can't Mend the World Without My Sadness. Rabbits frenzy amid the strawberries, scatter their wild griefs. There, above the clover, moths quiver in velvet capes. My children stare out the window, watch the god of lightning shatter the day's good work. The mighty anthill, the bird nest town atop the trees, chorus of four-nerved daisies among the weeds. I understand the world's need to rear and wreck, its loop of bounty and ruin. Maybe because I'm a mother, maybe because I'm a woman, but I love this world with such fervor and fright that this year I'll promise it anything. I have loads of yarn, at least 3 good glue guns, and enough tape to rearrange the stars so they spell mercy. I have my sadness and I have my children. What more can I promise them? The leaves, the rain heavy moth, every God forsaken rock. That I'll walk through the rubble in the morning with my needle and thread and stitch up the tender rabbit, the quiet worm. That I'll try to glue together every mangled nest strewn from the storm. Thanks.
Wow. Wow, that's so, one, I can't wait for your next book to come out. Everyone, I hope you saw I put Megan's website URL in the chat. Please go there and check out more of her work. Are any of your new poems up on your website, or can we find them online anywhere, Megan?
Some of them are online.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. So we will just madly Google your name online and look for your poems. No, I just, you know, so many great lines. I love the title of the last poem. I can't mend the world without my sadness. It's just that gets me thinking. So I can't wait to talk more poetry a little later in our discussion. And let's bring on our next amazing poet, Laura Van Prooyen, who's we're lucky to have in San Antonio. And she is the author of 3 collections of poetry. Her latest one, which just came out, is called Frances of the Wider Field. Her second book of poems was entitled Our House Was on Fire. Great title. And this was nominated by Philip Levine and was winner of the McGovern Prize. Her first book is called Inkblot and Altar. She is also co-author with Gretchen Bernabe of Text Structures from Poetry, a book of writing lessons for educators of grades 4 through 12. Laura is the managing editor for the Cortland Review, a wonderful review, check it out. She teaches in the low residency MFA creative writing program at Miami University in Ohio, and she's the founder of Next Page Press. So I'm excited to mute my mic and hear some of Laura's wonderful new poems.
Great, thank you, Alexandra. I also wanted to just say I'm super excited that the first full-length collection that will come out with Next Page Press, I hope you're all right with me saying so, will be Alexandra Van de Kamp's next book.
Thanks, Laura.
Yeah, so more to come, but hopefully we will all be at AWP together in Philly, and Alexandra can sign her brand new book for you there. So, but speaking of brand new books, I'll be reading a handful of poems from mine. It's, just for the sake, I wouldn't be a good poet without showing you the cover, right? Frances of the Wider Field. And when I was thinking about this panel and future, I take a little sort of slant look at things. And I like to think about time and how past, present, future sometimes all collapse. Maybe they all are there at the same time. So for the first few poems are from this book. And this first one is called Location Frances, because sometimes people ask me, who's Frances? So my answer has become, what is Frances? And here it is, Location Frances. When I say Frances, I mean the maple trunk bulging through chain link. I mean the pit bull with spiked collar who lives on the other side. I say Frances, and I sound like a leaking bike tire. Frances, my purple Schwinn, my flowered banana seat, my legs pumping through the subdivision that springs from the field. Frances rides on the air. You might say, I don't understand. And I'd say, this is not my voice. It's something in the leaves that keeps speaking. Something that saw me as a child, rubbed a coin on the sole of my foot. When I say Frances, I mean a woman. I mean a place. The dead cling to the land. The living cling to a story that, like currency, changes hands. Francis of the Pleiades. The afternoon has grown quiet, Francis. My cat's ear turns toward the sound of chimes. If I said, God is in the air, I could as easily have said, the child's uncreased face is a revelation. What does this matter to you? You're the jingle of keys. You're the motorcycle revving a block away. See, today was full of auspicious signs. And though you never believed in stars, it's you rising as my neighbor scuttles home from work. Is it wrong to say there's something luminous in my blood? Is it possible that the girl who buried the gecko covered you with stones? Francis, of all things and of no things. Don't get angry when I sing the wrong words. Don't forget the peppermints white as stars wrapped in tissue. Memory cannot undo the future. Francis, if I said, tonight I thank the seven sisters, it's really the blue dust of God between them, or you. I think this is the very first time I'm reading this next poem publicly. So, I'm trotting out a few things tonight. This is called Rush of Pulse and Song. Sometimes I hear a song and lean against the counter, forehead in my hand. What happened to afternoons tapped with rain and whiskey? I have a room in my head, wild horses playing as I taste my lover's kiss. Francis in the window waves her arms, twisted with veins that could circle our planet twice. What good are capillaries if stretched 50,000 miles? I understand pulse. I hear the rush in my ears. Francis on her back pumps her legs in the air to get the blood moving. Make hay while the sun shines, she says. What hay? What sun? I pour a drink and curl my tongue, a soft funnel so I won't burn my throat. Francis climbs the ladder in my ear. She's going to clean the gutters. Says there's a lot of roof up there, could use some sweeping. Thinking about future, it's impossible for me to think much about future without thinking of past. And this poem, makes me think about the past even at the cellular level, such as this is a poem about shingles, which I didn't know until I had once gotten them, that they were from a latent virus left over from the chicken pox. And, then thinking about this and thinking about all of the latent viruses that we might have in our memories and bodies and all kinds of things. So this is called inflammation of the nerves. It's just a case of shingles, latent virus, reactivated in the body. What kind of answer is a shingle? A house built on rock, roofed with, don't pay them no mind. My arm is hot, fever, shudder, search for cause, treatment, cause for big rash, small snake, hell's fire. What kind of answer is, your father had shingles, not too bad, just cover them up till they were gone. I cover up long-sleeved secret blisters on the nerve road of my left arm, hidden virus all these years in my cells. How do you define silence? Quiet does not mean dead. Quiet does not mean not listening. Activation of the latent virus is poorly understood. No one knows what triggers the secret blister in 92 degrees and sun, treatment limits travel of nerve bodies to the endings of the skin. Quiet does not mean don't pay them no mind. And I'm going to close with this one that's so brand new, I can only look to the future to know if it has anything worth keeping around in here. But interestingly, Megan read about sadness, and this is called Sadness in the Shape of a Phone. It's composed as monostitches, which is like one line stanzas. So I've been thinking a lot about my dependency on my phone and technologies. I think I want to break that dependency, but I don't know how. So, sadness in the shape of a phone. I feel you in my sagging pocket, cannot let you go. Webcam penguins waddle through a museum. Surprising moments wear the disguise of joy. Wasn't sadness meant to be private? Think boots, buy boots from pop-up ad. The government tracks my sadness. On this small screen, I watch a master class on hostage negotiation. If you put buds in your ears, you can listen. If you put buds in your ears, sadness will listen. I hold the Grecian shore in my palm. My fingers shrink and enlarge other people's successes. My husband holds his own sadness, keeps it close at night. My pocket is heavy. My head is heavy. Planes leave white trails across the sky. How did we get by without sadness outlined on our ass? I don't know where this is going. But it is my mother saying hello. Thanks, you all.
I love that, where we're madly typing lines in the chat, Laura. And I love how you talk about the idea of time. You know, obviously there's not such a neat, clean difference between the past, the present, and the future, and nothing like getting shingles to make you realize that. And wonderful Frances poems. Everyone, if you haven't checked out Laura's book, Frances of the Waterfield, it is wonderful. I've put her website in the chat. And Frances is a wonderful kind of mischievous, unpredictable presence in that book, along with other great poems. So thanks so much for sharing some of those with us, Laura. And then our next poet is the wonderful Patricia Spears Jones, coming in from Brooklyn. We're so thrilled she can join us tonight. I'll give you a little bit of background on her. She's an African-American poet, anthologist, literary curator, educator, and cultural activist who won the 2017 Jackson Poetry Prize from Poets and Writers. That's a Lifetime Achievement Award and no small feat at all. She's the author of a wonderful selected collection of her poems called A Lucent Fire, New and Selected Poems, and 9 other poetry collections. She edited Think, Poems for Aretha Franklin Inauguration Day Hat, and Ordinary Woman, an anthology of New York City women poets. She has received grants from the NEA, the New York Foundation for the Arts, and awards from the Foundation for Contemporary Art. She's also the recipient of many fellowships. I'll name just a few here. She's had residencies at the Rauschenberg Residency, Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, Yaddo, and more. She was the 2020 Louis D. Rubin Writer in Resident at Hollins University, and she's the organizer of the American Poets Congress and is a senior fellow emeritus at the Black Earth Institute. So everyone, with no further ado, let's welcome, Patricia to the virtual stage, and I can't wait to hear her poems.
Oh gosh. Hi, Alexandra, and thank you, Laura and Megan. And I met Megan last year when I was on the panel on girlness. We had fun talking about girlness. Laura was talking about time, and Megan was talking about mothering. I'm talking about questions and answers. So one of my little chapbooks is called Respuestas, which means answers in Spanish, and they're answers to questions from Neruda. And here is one of the ones that I rarely read, but I think is what's going on now. I think it's important. And please forgive my Spanish accent, not the best. Si se termina el amarillo, con que vamos a hacer el pan. The first line of each of all these poems is the question. If the color yellow runs out, what will we make red? Why the color yellow? Gold always, gold, the color of money, cowardice, sun, orange, tamarind, colors of unbaptized monsters humming in the depths of the Mississippi, the Amazon, the United States, blue, and what of Paraguay, Peru, white, color of abandonment. Millions from Africa, from Europe, come to make the new world greener, greater, bold, but this hemisphere was green and glorious, bold and treacherous, the old ways diseased, the new ways a mystery. Blue and unfathomable waters shelter poisonous snakes and musical frogs, birds of paradise, and on the hieratic steps of the Mayan temples, skulls, the color of tourist beaches. Priests led rituals made in anticipation of a new sword. But what they got was the gun, phosphorus, fire, yellow, the color of peasant breads, tortillas, corn patties, mush. How did these conquerors know what would take to make this new world? Not even you, dear poet. Witness the struggle to make bread with colors of this contested earth, with the colors given at birth. The economists carefully calculate the value of corn crops north and south of the equator, but their formulas motion indifference to poverty's rainbow. You knew who pays for the packaged goods, the soft white bread. You knew it would be the slashed hands of peasants and poets. So last year I really was at Holland's during this, and today is April 29th. On this day, 60,000 people had already died from coronavirus. And they were already talking about, quote unquote, opening the economy. Lonely, that is the word now, lonely. Self-isolation, quarantine, no hands held, no embraces, no last kiss on a beloved's lips, no graveside wailing, no dirt thrown into the earth's carved lawn. The pace of people departing is swift, too swift, and emotions are slowed down into a deep, dull blue, a blue of late twilight, just as the stars demand attention, or that steel wool gray of clouds auguring floods, thunder, the breaking of trees, houses, bodies. This cottage sits awkwardly on soft hill. The Japanese maple, now lovely, before it looked like a mistake. Dogwoods brighten the walkways, white as bridal gowns. And everyone keeps their distance, safe distance, as if we could, with loneliness, stop the virus. And if we do, then the pace of people departing would decelerate. We will gather the gloom of this time and wrap it in a cloth deep memory. We must care enough to claim this anguish and use it the way ancestors used the blues, plucking grim knowledge from the everyday, repeated in loud chords, mining the basso profundo of a road's gravel slide. self-isolation. Quarantine permits the asking of basic questions. What will together feel like? Who will teach touch? What are we to make of our bodies vulnerable to sharing that which is not seen, not heard, not felt until it is? What peace can we make with an entity as bold as a virus? We need it. We need touch. We need ritual. We need to gather to ourselves and commune. We see how wondrous the daily routine. School kids mad dash making the morning bell, ignoring emails on your office desktop, standing in line at the post office, are laughing at the corner about the time with and the how they. Community, the slogans once said. Community. We need to sound each other, to sniff for humans nearby, to trace the arm's skin, catching the scars. Lonely served as well in a time of panic. When our skin, our mouths, our cough could imperil each other, familiar or estranged. Our rituals for our swiftly departed will be that other side of this peril, and other novel ways we will make for those we now welcome. Infants breathing the maddening air of this 21st century. Their story started in the shadow of death. This was a very serious and silly poem, and you need to start figuring out, but it also asks some questions. It's called Litik, or How Not to See the Strawberry Moon, and I wrote this at the Community of Writers in Sierra Nevadas. You'll understand. The poet had too much to drink, and so forgive her this lyric spelled Litik. So look wrong. L-Y as opposed to L-Y-T as opposed to L. Litik are these stars in full array above the myriad evergreens. Oh, how they light the austere lawns of French estates, but what French estates in the Sierra Nevadas? Eyes leap over peaks of these massive hills, searching for clarity, but tongues sing gardens in the genesis of stories. Consider the spirit of summer solstice and gratitude and perplexity. The moon cannot be seen. The sun refuses to set in time enough for the poet to see the large red promised moon, the strawberry moon. The poet is perplexed by this seemingly endless daylight, the sun's refusal to surrender tonight. These mountains are as drunk as the poet tonight. The pollinating pine, the restless predators and their prey, like the moon moving where the moon moves, and dipping her raiments in red dots. Sun and moon and creatures hunting across mountains, then barking dogs and SUVs populating small segments of wide parking lots. The wind chimes cheer. Who will tell our stories? Who will want to hear about drunken poets? The origin of the strawberry moon. How gardens blossom beneath these stars' intensity. Luminous light, clarity, Clara, O poets nimble, work these bones. Be done unto terra and air, tales composed in patterns of flight and tusk, gold and rubies, pine trees and mountains. Our songs start in exuberance and anxiety. Spirits work our blood, and in the night's darkening air, making bracelets of gemstones and animal bones, culled from blood oaths and rifle butts, and tongues undone by drink and altitude. And I have just two more, and they're both dedicated to very different poets. And they will be hopefully hopefully in my new book when it comes out, and hopefully it will be called The Beloved Community. Right. The 5th of July, 2020. And this was written for, this is for Anselm Berrigan. And the first 3 words are something that he wrote. Work like miasma, fount of boundless energy, unlifted, the weekly cross carrying, candles out, more tomorrow. What of it? When will it be? Rockets, candles, fire, fire, candles, rockets, miasmic, beat, 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 the beat, 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 sky lashed with clouds, watery, rage, ready for release, rain, thunder, lightning, summer's heartless mares, roaring skies. Oh, say, can we be? Oh, say, can we be? The last poem is dedicated to the late and wonderful poet Mina Alexander. And the question here is, what do we take from other poets? And what we take, of course, are their words. The poem at sea. The poem found itself at sea. Poet forages another poet's vocabulary. Her words might prise open poet's mind-locked chambers, reveal the posture of jellyfish. Oh, this search for a key to closed chambers. Ah, wavy words ripple and undulate. One poet's gift to the other. The rigidity of imagery laps against a body's shore. We are living lakes sloshing against other bodies. Pardon, we say, as spilling over. Chemo, as it is the word chemo, the poet wants. A boundary too often crossed, a procession of cells mutating, and attempted murder of mutating cells. The loss of parts beautiful, hair, eyebrows, the keepsake of an almost intact body. That perfume of noxious sweats, charts, waves of tears, or cells, hearts, muscle loss. The poem is at sea, observed, distant from the harbor, its journey towards massive cliffs, far from this ravenous seagull, eviscerating a pigeon on red rooftop, and ascent towards abrasive beauty. Thank you.
Well, I loved that. Just those last words, abrasive beauty. And we are living lakes sloshing against other bodies. There are so many spectacular lines in all of those poems, Patricia.
Thank you.
And I love that you're asking these questions. I love the dialogue. So how many poems have you written with this dialogue with Neruda?
Oh, I did I wish I had an extra copy. There were about 9 of them. Yeah, and some of them are in A Lucent Fire. The Murión, tal vez después esos trenes que se estarían, perhaps they died of shame. Those trains have lost their way. That's there, and the other one that's there is and when you change the landscape, is it with your bare hands or with your gloves? Y cuando se muda el país, ¿sabe? ¿Son tus manos o son tus manos?
So everyone, yeah, you should, if you want to hear more of those poems, obviously A Lucent Fire, Patricia's New and Selected is a wonderful book. It's also just a beautiful book. I love the look of it.
With my friend Sandra Payne's beautiful collage on it.
Oh, great. I love that idea. So what an amazing selection of rich work. I think it'll take me a while to digest all these 3 great poetic worlds we've been treated to. But I thought I would just ask a few questions. You know, the name of this event is Writing Towards the Future. Ambitious title, but definitely a thought-provoking and interesting one. So I'm just going to ask a question, and Laura, Megan, or Patricia, feel free to chime in and just, you know, give us your thoughts. So here's the first one. In what ways have your poems taken on new kinds of hope or new kinds of despair as you look forward after 2020 and the first months of 2021? Like Patricia, obviously the poem you read about loneliness is such a wonderful, encapsulates some of this weird despair. Well, not weird, but just some recent
Not
real
weird. It's
despair.
just,
Yeah.
you know,
Um, but any of you,
2020 was a shit show for everybody. Let's just be very clear about that. So, and that's the last time you'll hear any bad words from me. But it's, you know, the only people happy were the people who were making everybody else's lives more difficult.
yeah, that pretty much sums it up, Patricia. But what about this idea of, in any of your poems, new kinds of hope, new kinds of despair, did you find yourself kind of, I don't know, finding different spaces in your work for despair or for hope? Laura, Laura, you want to begin? Sorry, I'll just say, Laura, begin.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I can't, the truth is I don't have a lot of new work. The writing was really hard in the pandemic for me. Reading was even hard. I feel like I'm just coming out of the fog. So that new poem I read tonight is a result of, right now I'm doing this, you know, maybe insanity challenge of writing a poem a day in National Poetry Month when I'm in the middle of lots of things. So, you know, that's why anything is happening, because I've forced it in a certain way with these boundaries. What I will say is I do find myself writing toward a new sense of hope, just from a few things that I'm trying to step back from the I so much, like the position of the I, and trying to step back from just ego to shift the gaze outward. And in some way, it's a relief to stop thinking of the self so much and to see connectedness in the world, on one hand with despair, but on another hand, some hope. So it's a little bit nebulous. It's kind of a new stance, but really just trying to shift like the writing gaze outward.
It's interesting. Megan, do you want to, because, you know, obviously a lot of your poems on mothering, I thought that the poem you read about, you know, having obviously a premature, you know, baby and all that kind of stuff, there just seemed to be a lot of pretty powerful stuff in there about navigating certain types of sorrow. Do you want to just comment on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think becoming a mother and becoming a mother to premature and pretty sick babies in the beginning has kind of like collided my worlds of kind of hope and despair, right? So there's a lot of like moments of despair, not just as like a mother of a preemie, but as just like a mother in general. You know, like waking up so often in the middle of the night to feed a newborn, how isolating it can be, having a newborn during COVID, and not being able to really like do anything and leave your house or you know, let family see your baby, and just trying to create, you know, an engaging and creative and beautiful environment for both of my children. My toddler, he just turned 3. You know, it's hard when they, you know, couldn't go back to school, and kind of, I'm a full-time working mom. Both my husband and I work. So just being able to show both my kids that the world is full of despair, but hope too. And I think that's what I'm trying to do with my poems, is kind of, you know, they're for my kids, I guess, is what I'm writing right now. But like Laura said, I've had a horrible go at it in terms of writing this past year and reading too. It's just been so hard to make anything beautiful. So anyways, yeah, it's a good question.
No, I love you know, I wrote a few quotes while you were reading your work, and like for one was like, all the snow melting from my dark self. And you say, these days we hold on to anything gentle. And I feel like that kind of spoke to me, because yeah, we haven't had the, you know, Patricia, your poem's amazing about that. Like, we're not able to be with each other, just that kind of warmth of human community. So
Well,
yeah,
yeah.
that spoke to me, you know.
I think no one, you know, it's like you don't miss your water till the well runs dry. I mean, I think that two things. I think there are a couple of things. I don't know about whether it's despair, 'cause I don't know that there's always despair and there's always hope. I think for me, it was about trying to have faith, which is a very different thing. And I think faith in stories, faith in one's intellectual capacity to ask questions or to think about time, however you do it, to think about the spirit. And I think that I think the spirit of not only of this nation, but of the world has been really tested in this time, because there's a great deal of grief that has barely, I mean, we're only now as a nation dealing with the grief of all these people who've been lost from one virus. And that's not on top of all the other things that people die from, you know, gun violence, you know. The hope that I got, and I sort of just alluded to a little bit in the 5th of July, is that people got out in the streets and started to seriously demand justice and systemic change in this nation, and the way in which it does its duty by Black and brown people, which is pretty, you know, people got up and everywhere. But it's also kind of, to me, it's also linked with what happened after all the women around the globe got up and said no to the sort of elevation of an extraordinary amount of misogyny and horror that the 4 years previous to this one took place. So we have a lot that we're working with. And when I think about the future, I think, you know, when I came up with the idea for this crazy, I mean, you know, came up with this idea for the master class, I really wanted to start thinking about, how do we look at community? How do we look at vision? How do we look at spirit? How do we look at it? And how do we think about those things? Because our predecessors did. But all they saw, I think, you know, and I think about Yeats, you know, I mean, you know, the Second Coming, you know, he basically said the apocalypse is upon us, you know, and here it is. But then there's this whole other group of people saying, oh no, this is the beginning of the age of Aquarius, and this is this is the birth pains, this is like the last. So who the hell knows, right? We don't know. But you know, you have to figure out, you know, whether it's how you mother, whether it's that you get up and every morning and try to write a poem, no matter what, whether you go to church or temple or, you know, burn sage, whatever it is, all these things are happening. And at some point, they're going to wind up for poets as words in a pattern of some sort.
No, that's a wonderful summing up of so much of what we're trying to talk about tonight. That was really interesting, Patricia. That idea of poem by poem, trying to, you know, get through the day or the month or the year. I loved what you said, Laura, about time in poetry and how your poems kind of collapse time and the, the past and the future and the present, kind of meld together. Let's talk just for a minute about like what poems can do with time, and is there anything healing in that or interesting about that? Laura, do you want to just comment on that a little bit more? I just loved how you were talking about time.
Yeah, sure. It stems from something quite personal, but then opens up to, the conceptual. So a lot of this book was written because I was trying to make sense of certain absences. On that literal level, my mom's mom died giving birth to her. So I grew up in the shadow of this story. My mom didn't really share this story until I was a little bit older. And the woman who raised her, who married my grandfather, actually the deceased wife's sister, she lived next door to us. So that's who I knew as grandma. So, there was a lot of this. It was complicated, but as I came of age, I realized that my mother was haunted by this absence so much. It's affected her. She still lives in the same house next to that house she was raised in with. She won't throw anything away for fear that she might throw something away that would give her the clues, So it made me think of this woman who neither one of us knew, such a looming presence in her absence. What if I tried to write toward understanding that? And that's when I realized that, she's deep past, but she's present, but she's future. She's all of these things together because, she became, and it made me realize that time is really on this continuum as we're making sense of who we are, where we're from, where we're going, what we hope to do. So that's really where that stems from. Is I felt like in writing this book, I was on several different planes of maybe consciousness, maybe presence, maybe time. Maybe I still don't know, but here we are.
Megan, do you want to just comment a little bit about even like when you write your poems, how does time feel, or just how have your poems in this, very challenging year maybe been footprints in the snow towards something, a way to get out of this? I don't know, like just any, I would love to hear your thoughts.
Sure. Yeah, I guess I'm still kind of trying to process both births. I didn't write a whole lot when I gave birth to my son in 2018, even though everyone in the NICU said, here's a journal, you should write. And I'm like, I know, I'm a poet. Bye. But I just didn't want to. I didn't. And I think now I'm finally like coming out of that. And so a lot of the poems are trying to kind of process grief through like a lens of now I'm in the present, looking back on this kind of traumatic birth and other things that were going on in my personal life, and then kind of mothering a second preemie. So having these different lenses has been really important. But I think grief and time are such interesting concepts, and how grief can pop up out of nowhere. You think you're done with it, but it's there, kind of always in your pocket, and it follows you around. And it's kind of, I don't know, I just kind of am thinking of grief as another child that I'm raising. And as time goes by, it gets a little bit older, gets a little bit smarter. So I guess that's how, I don't know if that's smart or not, but that's kind of what I'm thinking about. Yeah.
No, that's really, really interesting. Patricia, do you want to add just anything about
I think that, we are, as poets, we're doing something that is thousands and thousands of years old. And we're just the most recent variation on humanity's themes. And we need to recognize that. I think too often people carry on as if nobody ever wrote something, or they didn't write anything until like 5 years ago. Back in the day, like yesterday. But in a way, one of the reasons why I did the request is that I like the idea of being in conversation with almost any writer, living or dead. And and what, if Neruda showed up tomorrow, I think we'd have a nice drink. So we need to, what we do is big, it's not small. Poetry is huge. And I think that going back to what Laura said, going beyond one's own ego, I often write, I obviously have some poems that are very much about my own subjectivity, but I also try to write out of experience and try to connect to other people's larger experiences, because I think that's extremely important. And I think it often is lost in the idea that one must sort of hone in on one idea or one kind of practice, and I'm for trying whatever it is that works for you. The time is that our physical self is now, but as Laura just pointed out, our physical self started generations ago. We would not be here if somebody had not done something a long time ago. And Megan is now mother, so she's making people who will make new people. So that is the continuum. That is the continuum. And we need to understand that and use it.
No, I love that idea of the continuum, that we do something big. And I think, so are you kind of actively trying to ask questions in all different kinds of ways in your poems now, or have conversations? Like, you said you're really interested in asking questions now. So
I think if anybody who reads my work sort of figures that out,
Yeah.
I have my moments of rhetorical flourish, not all the time, but no, I want to ask the questions, and I want to make work where people say, what is she saying and what should I now say? I want a bigger conversation about everything. And so that it's not, and I feel like I come from an incredibly sophisticated people. That's why the blues shows up in Lonely Is. I mean, really and truly, all of those aches, those pains, that hope, that despair, it can be heard in a Robert Johnson song. All right. So why, we have in this culture already so much to use from, why aren't we using it?
Great. No, I love that. I love the way you just phrased that, Patricia. Yeah, let's take part in it. Let's make the conversation bigger and bigger, and remember who started it before us, right? So I guess we're already at 7. I can't believe it. I do want to leave some time for audience questions. Does anyone, and I have another question I would happily ask, but just to, is there anyone in the audience who just would love to ask Laura, Megan, or Patricia a question? You can put it in the chat, or put your name in the chat and we can unmute you. Josh can unmute you. It's audience Q&A time. We'd love to hear from you. Anyone with a question? You can kind of, type it in the chat and I'll ask it to the poets, whichever method you prefer. I'm going to give people 5 seconds to think of a question if you have one. Would it be okay if I asked one more question? Patricia, what do you think? Megan, Laura, what do you think? I'll just ask one more, and if you have, we'd love to hear if you have any questions at all, just put them in the chat, we'll ask away. So I just wanted to, actually, this is kind of inspired by some conversation we had a few weeks ago, Patricia, but this idea of praise, just to touch on it a little bit, I thought, how can praise be a form of protest, or how can it be a form of kind of shifting the idea of who we honor, or are any of you finding ways that you're praising things now? I'm just curious about talking about praise in any of your poetry. Laura, do you want to start just any about how you maybe are finding yourself praising things in different ways now or not? I'm just curious.
One poem that I managed to write in recent history is actually called Praise is a Dark Bird. And it kind of goes around trying to praise things. It starts with a line borrowed from Larry Levis. I can't even quote it directly, but it was, the spirit says you are nothing because you have praised nothing for months, something like that. That's paraphrase. But so I borrowed Levis's line as a launching point, and then it went into a poem of various praises that sometimes are a little bit dark, but sometimes, it's kind of like, truthfully, I was just walking around a lot in the pandemic. That's what I did, is I walked. And here in San Antonio, I would go down to the Riverwalk very early on the weekends, and there weren't very many people there. And so I started to notice things that I never had occasion to notice before. So it's kind of like that. So praising what is around me, where I could find those things that are beautiful, or things that I just never, the pandemic was, it was a lot of things, but one of the things that it was too was these long stretches of time that were verging on boredom, or me trying to figure out what was next, like, what am I doing? And then the boredom turned into walking, and then the walking turned into awareness. So then it was kind of great too. But time functioned in a different kind of way. So I had to praise what I had access to.
No, I love that line, praising what you had access to. Megan, did you want to just weigh in on this a little bit, the idea of how poems can praise, and did you find yourself praising things in any new way or not? Just curious.
Yeah, I think when you have a toddler, like, they are so in awe of the smallest things. So, I just think ordinary things became praiseworthy for us. Just mail in the mailbox and water in a bathtub. It was just these tiny things. And I think, like Laura said, the pandemic definitely amplified, the ordinariness of our lives being kind of cooped up. And so, I guess my poems seem to be trying to hold on to those moments of praise that I am inspired by from my children. And that's definitely different than what I was writing before becoming a mother. Definitely different.
That's super interesting. Patricia, do you want to just comment on just poems and praise, or?
No.
Okay.
I think that I write a lot of things in response, in dialogue, and in some ways, what I write about in dialogue has a lot to do with what I admire or respect, or what pisses me off, one or the other. So the Betty Saar poem that was in the New Yorker is in praise of an incredible drawing of hers that scared me half to death. I don't know about whether that was praise or that was just, oh, okay, you just gave me something that scared me half to death. But I saw some stuff in you have.
Yeah, no, we have some nice questions coming in now, so I'm just gonna so Sarah Colby Sarah, you want to just unmute yourself and ask your question? I think it might be nice directly coming from you.
Sure. Sorry, I can't get my video to work. Hope you're all enjoying my palm tree. So this is for any on the panel. So often poets are read and heard by other poets. So in a sense, we're often preaching to the choir and in conversation with each other. How do you envision expanding the dialogue to invite the broader community into the conversation? Thanks.
Well, I think that every time you do anything, I mean, not everybody who shows up at a poetry reading is a poet. And I've been to enough of them to know, I'm probably older than most of the people on this panel for sure. So I've seen that. And I think that it's very interesting because this year, I think because of the pandemic, one of the things that really happened was that people started to turn to poetry. They didn't have the kind of wherewithal to read long novels, or you know what I mean. I couldn't, and so I said. So I think we do what we can, but one of the things that I wish would happen a lot more and starting to was in the 19th century. Poems were regularly published in newspapers. In daily newspapers, not just every once in a while. And I think that would be kind of great. I know somebody who is Judith Roach. I don't know, she's no longer with us, wonderful poet from Seattle. But she used to open the city council meetings with a poem. So poets can be darn near anywhere and do darn near anything. It's whether we are asked to or whether we demand to be in those spaces.
No, Laura, Megan, you want to just chime in on that? That's a great answer, Patricia.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're on the right path. I mean, we have Amanda Gorman. She represented us really well. I think that when we have more young people like that coming, or not just young people, any kind of person that has that kind of platform. I mean, wow, the things that young woman is doing for the poetry world right now is just, we can all do that. So yeah, I think we're doing it. It's they're in pockets and it's quiet, but then we've got some really loud voices out there too, like Amanda. So I'm just really excited that more people are turning to art and poetry and music. I mean, that seems to be what we do in times of trouble or pandemics. We turn to art, right? That's what we do.
No, great. Laura, you want to just add to that in any way?
I'll just add by saying there's some great poetry podcasts out there that are, free to listen to, and they're online. One of them is called Poetry for All, which is run by Joanne Diaz, and I don't remember Abram's last name, but what they do is like these 20-minute digestible podcasts where they, their intent is really to do exactly what this question says. It's designed for everyone. It's anyone who has an interest in poetry, and they're doing a wide range of poets, and they read it, they discuss it a little bit and put it out there. And for all I know, they have a forum where there's actual conversation with listeners. I don't know that for sure. So I think the resources are just, they're everywhere. And I love what Patricia said about, I wish newspapers on the daily would have poems in it. Here in San Antonio, we at least get them on the weekends. Yeah, our local paper here, if you're still in San Antonio, I subscribe to the regular print paper because I want my kids to one day say, we used to get the newspaper. But we do, we still get the newspaper. And, so you can open it up and there's a poem every Sunday.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I read the Financial Times on the weekends because it has great, it is really great art stuff. And they publish poetry all the time. The other thing is that the slam community is huge. And I mean, and once COVID is kind of damped down and people can perform again, I think that's going to be, they'll be resurrected. I mean, a lot of the kinds of things that Amanda Gorman did, a lot of those youth poet stuff, all that came out of the slam community, and I think as somebody who has read at the New Eurekan Poets Cafe and for, stuff for the, academia, poems, if you're a really good poet, people will hear you. They will not run out the room. If you're not too good, they will leave. That is all I have to say.
So everyone work on your craft, work on your poems. I think like Andrea Vocab Sanderson, our poet laureate of San Antonio, can I just say she's a kick-ass example of getting out there. She's one among many people, but she's just one example that comes to mind, and doing all these great things with poetry. I don't know how the woman does it. She's got 36 hours in each day, but she's like doing flamenco dance performances with poems. She's working with local quartets. She's doing films. And so, that is kind of an exciting thing, that poetry is finding its way in all these different forms. Yeah.
And one more thing, there seems to be every other person has something on Instagram.
Yes. Instagram
Live is going to kill us.
I think we have another question coming in from Rebekah. Do you want to, Rebekah, you want to ask this, or do you want me you can unmute and ask yourself?
I just want to thank you for this wonderful opportunity. And somehow when you were reading the poems, it just felt like it was very humbling to hear you all speak and sort of like a child, the way you all read it. So I just wanted to know whether it's just because that's how your nature is, or if the things have just over the years have humbled you and that's become your reading style as well. Thank you.
So yeah, anyone, Laura, you want to chime in, or anyone, Megan, Patricia? So how you're reading your poems tonight has sort of a humble quality to it. Is that correct, Rebekah? And you're just asking about that.
Yes, thank you.
I don't know about how it is. Thank you for your question. I don't know how the readings are received always, so I'm not sure. I do read out loud, like I practice and stuff. I like to hear how the work is out loud and in the air, and where it makes sense to pause, and how to, I really feel like there is sort of an agreement. If you all are going to show up to listen, I want to make sure that what you're listening to has been well thought. Mm-hmm. So, I see it as a responsibility to really bring the best that I know how to give to the work and to the listener. So I don't know if that answers it in particular, but I am very conscious of that. And I think I'm getting more and more, the work is becoming more embodied in my delivery than it probably used to be.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, I don't think about humble as the last word I would use. I think that what I heard was from both from Megan and Laura, and hopefully from myself, was a real sense of an honoring the words we were reading, so that you actually could hear them, because you don't have them in front of you unless you don't have books or something. And most of us are reading new work that you haven't seen. So if we don't read them slowly and carefully, you won't hear it. I found the question a little odd. I think I'm not in a hurry when I read my poems. You might be as a listener, but I'm not in a hurry. So not really. but I really want you to hear what I have to say. And I want you to know what I think is really important. I think that's what I heard from Megan. That's what I heard from Laura. If Alexandra was reading, that would be what I hear from her. And also, this is on Zoom. So we're not in front of a live audience. And we're not in front of a lot of people, either going yay or nay to whatever it is we're doing. And so it's very difficult. You know, if we don't give you this now, you won't hear it. You know, it's just a different way of.
No, that's a good point. I'll never forget when I saw my first poetry reading on Zoom and the silent hand clapping went up and I was like, wow, things are really changing. So I think that's an interesting point, that we maybe are reading in a certain way because we're not in a room together. So Deepika, I think what you might have heard is maybe humble, like a humble tone was really more like a careful, deliberate tone to make sure we're being heard. So interesting question. You know, it brings up this, you know, how do we interact with audiences when all of us are sitting alone in our rooms? It's a challenge, right? It's a challenge. So are there any, I mean, I think we're running late. This was supposed to end at 7 p.m., but that's cool. I think, yeah, I think we should probably wrap up unless someone has one more burning question. This is a big topic, writing towards the future, obviously much more than we can poetically chew off in an hour. But I do love this idea of talking about just how our poems are kind of saving us in all different kinds of ways in this very difficult time. And everyone is doing that in a different way. So it was really great hearing about your work, Laura and Megan, Meg and Patricia. I loved hearing that poem about loneliness, was just, you know, very powerful. So it was just great hearing your different, you know, poetry worlds tonight. So I think we're going to have to wrap it up, people. I hate to say that, but we did put in the chat, I hope you saw that, we put in Megan's website, we put in Laura's, we put in Patricia's. Please check out their books. They're all on Amazon, or support their independent publishers if you can. They're very much worth spending time with on the page if you don't already have the physical book with you. So, and we do have a survey, everyone. Please fill it out. We want to bring you more great moments like tonight. But thank you for joining us. I think, you know, we loved hearing the work of these three poets. Thank you for your questions. And just keep in touch with Gemini, www.gemininc.org. We'll have more author readings, more events. And thanks for being with us tonight. And thanks, Laura, Megan, and Patricia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
I hope there's a screenshot.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, that's a good point. I can try to make sure that we have one. Hold on. Josh, can you take a screenshot? Wait, well, we have these three amazing poets on screen.
I got it.
Okay, good. Yay! Thanks for acting quick. This is also on Facebook Live, everyone, so you can kind of see it play again on Facebook if you missed parts of it tonight or just want to see parts of it again.
Thanks for your thoughtful questions, Alexandra.
Oh, yeah. And thanks. I loved hearing your work. It felt real. I just felt really fed by it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was just wonderful. And I'm so glad I got to hear Megan again and to hear Laura for the first time. And Alexandra, you're doing great things in San Antonio.
Oh, thanks, Patricia.
You are. You know that.
I will see
Thank
you.
you, Josh, in the background.
And we will see you Saturday, Patricia, for your master.
And for a very long time.
Yeah.
Donuts. No.
I wish I could. Coffee and donuts, man. That would be nice. You
I
know?
can't wait to see you all in person and say hello in the real life. But Patricia and Megan, it was so nice to meet you and share this space with you. Thank you for your poems.
Yes.
Thank you for yours. Yes.
It was wonderful. It was an honor to be with you guys. Thank you. All right, time for bath time with my kiddos.
Okay. Bye, Megan.
It was
great
nice to meet you.
Bye.
See you.